I'm reminded of, and we of course covered this on Telemundo extensively, just last week a journalist was killed in Nicaragua. 3 newspapers were closed in Nicaragua by the government because they didn't want journalists to say and show what was happening. In Mexico, where journalists are constantly being harassed, many killed, and the only thing for certain there is the impunity that reigns when someone is murdered. The Robert Capa Gold Medal, as we now shift to photography, is for the exceptional courage and enterprise and is sponsored by Getty Images. Tonight's citation goes to Ivor Prickett of the New York Times for What ISIS Left Behind. And the award goes to Carol Guzy of Zuma Press for Scars of Mosul, the legacy of ISIS. Carol stepped outside the bonds of conflict, offering intimate, sensitive, and haunting coverage of the innocents we often do not see reflected in the images of war. Carol. Congrats.
Thank you so much. Robert Capa said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. But close enough doesn't always mean standing directly amid bullets and bombs, though I bow to the bravery of combat photographers risking all on the front lines. Yet the definition of courage has evolved. A subtle but still profound kind of courage can be staying with a story even when it's ripping your own heart to shreds, though realizing it's very small compared to the suffering endured by those most vulnerable in world conflicts. Last year, I documented a medical mission with a nonprofit providing assistance to IDPs in Kurdistan who survived the ISIS doctrine of intolerance, living for years in the limbo of overflowing camps, mostly forgotten after dramatic headlines were over. Struck by how severely the pain of persecution and loss haunted them, but also touched by their warmth and dignity, it felt vital to return and cover Mosul's battle for liberation from ISIS. A forsaken flood of humanity fled fierce urban fighting. Many were trapped or held captive as human shields. They arrived at a trauma stabilization point near the front line with the US Global Response Team and Iraqi medics providing triage and transport for civilians escaping the conflict and also soldiers, some in their last moments of life. Desperate and weak, most of the walking wounded were destined for those same IDP camps and a future of ambiguity. The goal was to evoke viewers to feel empathy for those exiled. They were not simply collateral damage. They were individuals with shattered hopes and dreams, still choosing life in this new chapter of their sad reality. I wanted people to really see them. All endured a moving front line with ISIS emerging from a maze of tunnels, rubble laced with IEDs, sniper fire, car bombs, grenade attacks, harsh 130-degree heat. ISIS orphans were pulled from the rubble after their parents blew themselves up with suicide bombs. A tiny waif named Khadija kept calling for her mother, not realizing she'd caused the burns her little girl endured from her own explosion. A young boy was found eating raw meat, and the soldiers and medics suspected that it was likely from the dead bodies of ISIS fighters surrounding him. What is the cure for those kind of scars? A woman named Aliyah held tightly to her 12-year-old child, Ula, who passed away on the truck just 2 hours previously before reaching safety. She said it was from lack of food and water as they were trapped in the old city. She clutched that tiny body and would not let medics take her. And in a scene of elation, an elderly lady in a wheelchair rejoiced when her son was released after being checked for ISIS connections. She kissed everyone near her, including me. And it was poignant to witness the heroism of medics and volunteers working tirelessly amid airstrikes and carnage to bandage battered faces. The images were published and distributed worldwide by Zuma Press, and later Scott McKiernan, here tonight, suggested a series titled Faces of Mosul to highlight the struggle of those lost in the shadows of despair. This conflict is over, but it left a society in ruins, a city in rubble, and a massive humanitarian crisis. Their war is not over. And these prestigious awards don't belong to journalists. We simply accept them for the people in the stories. And it's with deep humility that I stand here in tribute to the people of Mosul and all other innocents caught in horrific conflicts, yet emerging from those atrocities with their resilience and even grace. That is the purest definition of courage. Thank you for seeing them.
Thank you.